Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining today's event, Breaking Down Blockchain, Understanding the Growing Market for Blockchain Training. Before we get started, I'd like to go over some very quick housekeeping notes. First, I recommend you turn off any programs that could potentially take bandwidth, such as Outlook or Instant Messenger. Second, we encourage and enjoy interaction, so please go ahead and submit any questions you might have via the chat or Q&A box that you'll find on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll make sure to address all of your questions at the end of today's webinar. Lastly, today's session is being recorded, and we'll share a link to the recording to all those who have registered within the next few days. So with that being said, let's get started. I'm Vanessa Welly, Marketing Director here at Logical Operations, and I'll be your host today. I'm joined by Jeff Felice, EVP, Partners and Alliances at Logical Operations, and Joan Hill, Director, Partners and Alliances at Logical Operations, plus two special guests from Blockchain Training Alliance, Melissa Richardson, Co-Founder and Education Manager, and Megan Mead, Global Partner Manager. They've got an exciting agenda planned for you today. So without further ado, I'll pass it over to Jeff to get us started.
Thank you so much, Vanessa, and thank you everyone for joining us today. We're really excited to have Melissa and Megan from the Blockchain Training Alliance with us today. As you'll hear today, we've recently partnered with the Blockchain Training Alliance to bring their globally recognized training curriculum and certifications to the academic marketplace. And the goal of today's webinar is to introduce you to Blockchain Training Alliance, the training products that they do have available, training and certification products, I should say, and the opportunity for blockchain training specifically for students, whether traditional or non-traditional students. With that said, I will now turn it over to Melissa and Megan to take us through the rest of the presentation today.
Thank you everyone for joining. As Jeff mentioned, my name is Melissa Richardson, and I'm going to be walking you through what blockchain, what courses we offer, what certifications we offer, and hopefully answer any questions that you have about blockchain education. To get started, I'm sure everyone on this phone call has heard a lot about the promise of blockchain. It's a huge buzzword right now. But it really is becoming more than just a buzzword. There are a lot of companies that are implementing blockchain as a service, and there's a tremendous amount of promise on the business value of blockchain. So you can take a look at some of the numbers here on the global spend for blockchain, the new development that companies are putting into blockchain. They definitely most businesses are expecting blockchain to be a part of their business going into the next decade. So blockchain definitely has a lot of promise moving forward. And that brings us to, with the promise of blockchain, who is going to design, develop, secure the blockchain. And if you look here, you can see the demand for growth for engineering roles. There's a massive gap in the market right now where people don't have the certifications, qualifications, or knowledge to be able to go into a company and help with blockchain. And that's created this huge gap of hiring people who are looking for people who have that skill set. So we're hoping through our training and certification to help close that gap and bring qualified people into the market. So there's a lot we can talk about with what blockchain is. What I would encourage everyone to do, if you do have the time, through Logical Operations, there is a Business Foundations free class. It's about 6 to 8 hours, depending on how quickly you move through it. And it's really worthwhile to take advantage of that free training. It will walk you through not only what blockchain is, but it will also walk you through the use cases of blockchain, who's using it, where, why. It's a great benefit to be able to have that class, the knowledge of that class with you. So I'm not going to go through necessarily all of the benefits of blockchain here. I think the biggest thing to understand is what blockchain provides that we haven't had to date is an environment of tamper-proof transaction history. So a lot of the things that you read about, the breach at Target, the breach with, I think it was Experian, a lot of that can be eliminated through blockchain. So there's a lot of promise that blockchain holds, and I'm going to talk about some of the companies that are doing training on blockchain and what they're using the training for. I think that will be really interesting and help everyone kind of understand where blockchain fits into different verticals. So here we talk about the blockchain initiatives are increasing. The biggest initiatives that we see are in the financial services and in supply chain. So in supply chain, Walmart has mandated that anyone who is a leafy green supplier is on the blockchain by September of this year. It's a mandate. So if you're selling kale, lettuce, any kind of leafy green, it's a mandate that went out. So that's putting a lot of pressure on companies to move onto the blockchain quickly. We also see a lot of supply chain companies coming forward like FedEx. FedEx is starting to move a lot of their initiatives onto blockchain. In the public sector, one of the more exciting things that we see is voting is talked about quite a bit. So voting is a big use case for blockchain in order to make sure that voting, that your vote counts, B, that we can ensure a fair voting practice. But one of the ways that I'm not sure how many of you are familiar with Cook County, but it's where Chicago is. And they have moved all of their land deeds to the blockchain. So anyone who has any kind of parcel in that county, all of that is moved over to the Hyperledger blockchain. It was a big initiative and an important one because it really protected people. So the deeds weren't just sitting on paper anymore. So there's a lot of use cases that are happening in the public sector, also around farmland. And farms that are subsidized and how those subsidizations get paid out. And then healthcare is another big topic in blockchain. We've done some training over at Merck that we can talk about later in the presentation. But these are really the four main verticals where people are discussing blockchain and use cases are being implemented right now. So the appeal to the enterprise. I think before we get into this slide, I want to talk about, and we're going to bring this up later, what the difference is between two different types of blockchain, both public and private. But the biggest appeal to enterprises is there's no single point of failure. So you're not looking at a database and being able to be hacked. There's no single point where that can happen. So that protects companies from disasters, from being hacked, from lost data. It's a more reliable system for them. And so let's go and talk about the different types of blockchains, and then we'll kind of circle back to this slide because I think that will help in understanding the different appeals to the different types of blockchains. So the training opportunity within blockchain, like we already discussed, is huge. There's a large shortage of talent in the marketplace of people who understand blockchain, and then also people who can validate that skill set. There's been no authoritative voice on certification to date. And what we actually did is we partnered with Pearson VUE, who many of you are probably familiar with, and all of our exams are run through Pearson VUE. And that gives a lot of validation to the exams because people have to go in, they have to show their ID. We know that it's not an online test where you're not really sure if the person has another screen open or if they're using notes. Pearson VUE provides a lot of validity to the exam, and companies really like that the exams are through Pearson VUE. It's a proctor that they're comfortable with. It's a brand that they trust. The exams also give employers a way to validate the skills of prospective employees and of their current employees. So we're doing a lot of training for Capgemini, for IBM, for Merck, for Air France, people who want to validate skill set of their employees. So with the shortage in talent, we ended up developing a bunch of different curriculum around blockchain. And we're going to talk about some of that curriculum next. And hopefully that will help segment who would be best suited for which class. So the first class that we have is Blockchain for Business Professionals. This is by far one of our most popular classes. It's a one-day class that really is just going to help people understand what is blockchain, what's the benefit of using it, what are the use cases, who's using it, what's the cost to use it, where do we see the future going with blockchain. It goes through the key terms and the key concepts of blockchain, so someone can come out of that class and understand what blockchain is and why people are using it. They might not know how to implement it, how to secure it, or how to develop it, but they understand the concept of it. This is a great starting point for anyone who's interested in blockchain. We train people on this class anywhere from CEOs down to people who are just starting to get into technology. Just to understand the concepts, it's a great springboard. And this is a class I was actually recommending that anyone on this call can take. It's 6 to 8 hours. It's a fantastic course for the basics. The next class that we offer is Blockchain Architecture. This is our second most popular class. It's a 3-day class, and this starts to cover which type of blockchain you should use, why should you even launch a blockchain? Do you have a good use case for doing that? And it's going to cover the difference between, and this is what I was talking about earlier, public and private blockchains. So as we go through the classes, you'll see we have private blockchains, which is mostly what we refer to in the slides here. The class we have on a private blockchain is Hyperledger Fabric. And then there's public blockchains, which are mostly referred to in the context of our training as Ethereum. So Ethereum is a public blockchain, which means anyone can see any of the data that's posted on it. So a great use case for an Ethereum blockchain would be our certifications. We take all of our certifications that someone passes at Pearson VUE, and we push that up to the Ethereum blockchain. It's there forever. Any employee can go look at the data on it, when this person got certified, it doesn't release their score, but it enables someone to validate in a public way that they in fact were certified. If you can think about how many people on LinkedIn might post that they graduated from Harvard or a college that they didn't, having universities eventually credential their diplomas on a public blockchain allows for the validity of that certification or that diploma. A private blockchain is what we were talking about with the IBM use case with the leafy greens. With a private blockchain, there's stuff that Walmart might not want people to see. For example, they might not want the end consumer to see how much they paid for kale, or where the kale got marked up through different vendors. It allows them to keep certain aspects private, and that's really powerful for a lot of organizations who don't necessarily want everything out there on the public network. So when people talk about public and private blockchains, while there are hundreds and thousands of public and private blockchains, the two that we're seeing mostly in corporate America right now are Ethereum being the public one, and then Hyperledger being the private blockchain. In the financial space, we're seeing a lot of people use the Corda blockchain, which we're going to talk about right here. So the overview class and the architecture class are two of our baseline classes. There's no prerequisites for either class. There's no hands-on labs. These are classes to understand the concepts and understand which blockchain should be used, why, when, and to make those important business decisions. So when we get into our technical classes, and these would be any kind of programming class that you would think of, I would compare it, I guess, to if you were taking someone from Microsoft and they wanted to learn SQL. So here we have our Corda class. This is a class a lot of banks are using. We did a training at USAA. This is the class that they were most interested in. This training is also 3 days, and it's ideal for people who are looking for transaction speed, and it's geared toward the finance business. So Corda is one of the larger blockchains on the market right now. And then we have what we were just talking about, Ethereum and Hyperledger. So our Ethereum training is also a 3-day class. This is really designed with Corda, Ethereum, and Hyperledger. They're going to have some kind of programming background where at some point they've said hello world. These classes have a lot of about 50% hands-on labs. They're coding intensive. People are going to walk away understanding how to build out that blockchain. So the ability to have that prerequisite is not just important, but it's really required, or you're going to have people who are lost in class. The Ethereum class is a 2-day class. This is for people who are looking to understand how to write smart contracts on that public network. Ethereum was one of the first big blockchains, so there's a lot more people who understand Ethereum right now than Hyperledger or Corda, but it's definitely an important blockchain to understand. It uses a language currently called Solidity, and students will learn that language in the Ethereum class. So the Hyperledger Fabric class is interesting because Hyperledger is a project, and there are, I think there's 7 or there might be 8 now, I'd have to check, different projects within Hyperledger. Fabric is the most mature. So Fabric is, a lot of the code was contributed by IBM. So if you were watching the Super Bowl and you saw IBM running a commercial with Walmart about blockchain, they're referring to Hyperledger Fabric. This is really what IBM is pushing, and they're contributing a lot of the code to this project. So all of the training that we do around Hyperledger is on Hyperledger Fabric currently. In this class, they're going to learn a language called chain code. And in order to take this same thing, you need a programming background. It's going to be about 50% hands-on labs. They're going to have to understand how to walk away building out a Hyperledger Fabric blockchain and all the components of that. So Corda, Ethereum, Hyperledger, the 3 programming classes. The other classes that we have are more specialty classes. So our blockchain security class, this is a new class that we rolled out in October, and it's received really good feedback. There's a number of people on LinkedIn that have said this is just as hard or harder than the CISSP. So for those who are doing security training or have a niche of security, this is a great class to intermix in there to understand what traditional cyber attacks are and what attacks are like on the blockchain. This is a 3-day class. It has a little bit of coding within it, but you more need to have the desire and the experience in security to participate in this class. Understanding basic networking security would definitely be a benefit to taking this class. Then one of the new specialty classes we just released is data science and blockchain. So how does a data scientist use the data within blockchain in order to create better data? So this class is a new course that anyone that's taking it would traditionally be a data scientist, a business analyst, and here we're going to jump into our certifications. As I mentioned, the certifications are run currently through Pearson VUE. Pearson VUE runs every exam that we have here, and that's proctored at Pearson VUE. The CBBF, which I mentioned is the most popular class that we have, does have a 1-day, it's the 1-day class. It does have an exam that corresponds to it. That exam is a 90-minute exam. All of our exams are 90 minutes, and all of the pass rates are 70%. So you need a 70% or greater in order to pass any certification. And this really walks through who would be your target for this type of certification. And again, the business foundations is a foundational one. Solution architect would be the next step. And then we start moving into security and the 2 development ones that we discussed. We do have a certification being released on Corda, but it is not released yet. So there'll be a total of 6 certifications: the business foundations, the solution architecture, security, and then our 3 programming ones: Ethereum, Hyperledger, and Corda. So the prerequisites that I already mentioned, foundations and architecture, don't have any prerequisites. Anyone can participate in these classes. So that's really exciting because there's such a wide reach. If you have the desire to learn, you can do well in either of these courses. For the technical classes, as I mentioned, some kind of background in programming language and a fundamental concept of what blockchain is. We have here just a certification roadmap. I think Logical Operations can distribute this to everyone. We have this branded for them as well. And this walks people through what the tracks are. An important thing to note is the tracks are not dependent on each other. So you don't need foundations to take security or solution architect to take a developer. Each certification is independent and they're tied to each training that you see here. So hopefully this graphic gives everyone kind of a good idea of what class you would take in the corresponding exam. Does anyone have any questions about the certifications or the trainings? Okay, I'll move along here. So what's available for purchase? I don't know if Jeff, if you want to jump in here or you want me to kind of go through this part, but there is availability through Logical Operations to have a print or digital book, an exam voucher through Pearson, and lab environment. Go ahead, Jeff.
Great. Yeah. Thank you, Melissa. Yeah. So again, for each, there's the ability to really to do 3 things. So you can actually host classes yourselves for whether instructor-led, so brick and mortar, or virtual. In those cases, you would, as you can see here, you have the ability to have a print plus digital book option. If you're a customer or partner with Logical Operations today, you'll be familiar with those formats. Also, as Melissa noted, there are currently 5 exams, and with the 6th coming soon. And so those exam vouchers that would be redeemed by the student at Pearson VUE are also available through Logical Operations. And then for the 2 developer courses, they, as Melissa noted, they are 50% or more hands-on intensive. And so there are lab environments available for those when you deliver those, again, whether brick and mortar or virtual. If we go to the next slide here.
So this is really why clients are choosing us. And one of the main reasons that clients choose us is that we're built for the enterprise. Our training is built with the goal that people can go and have a career in an enterprise type environment. A lot of our exams, actually all of our exams, were sent to companies like Oracle, Siemens, Luxoft, Purdue University. We sent these exams to these organizations who helped validate the exams for their relevancy in the current market, the rigor of the exam. They built a lot of the questions for them. So we're ensuring that the content that we're building and the exam questions that are being created that we're expecting people to pass, people can really come out of that and know that when they pass this is built for going and having a career within blockchain or within tech and to prove that they understand blockchain. The second thing that we do that a lot of companies don't do currently in the market is we have continual updates of our content. The blockchain is open source and it moves quickly. So Hyperledger, it started last May on 1.1. We're already on 1.4. They expect it to be on 2.0 by the end of the year. And we are always building our content to support those current changes. It makes for a lot of updates. It's not like Cisco where you'll see it roll from 2.0 to 3.0 over a year's period, or ITIL where it just moved from 3 to 4. These changes are happening fast, and the updates are frequent, and we have to stay on top of them. So all of our content, all of our labs, everything that we provide, the exams, they're all being updated constantly with the new releases, the new revisions that are rolling out. An exception to that would be the overview class. The overview class doesn't need to be updated as frequently because it's just the terms and the concepts of blockchain, which don't change with updates to versions. Our training is also highly interactive. There's questions, there's discussion, there's lab environment. We're really focusing on the business value within the class of people understanding how do you take this and implement it for value within a company. So we have hands-on labs with the 3 technical classes that we mentioned, and we're really preparing people to be able to take this content and utilize it within a corporate setting at some point. And that doesn't mean that they're going to have a career in blockchain per se. Some people might leave our training and have a career in blockchain, but many people who are taking the class might go on and have a career in any kind of computer science or cybersecurity environment. But having that background of blockchain, which is such an important part of emerging tech right now, and to understand what blockchain is and where and when it can and should not be used, that's really critical to understand for anyone that's moving into tech right now. I mean, there's a lot of emerging tech. There's IoT, blockchain, and machine learning. And having, regardless of what you're going to do within the tech space, having this background, even if it's not something you're going to be doing every day, is a really important thing to have going forward. It's talked about, and I can promise in talking to companies, it is talked about in every organization right now. So understanding it, I think, is a critical component. And then here we're going to talk about BTA versus the competition. So as I keep mentioning, we're the only training organization focused on the enterprise, and our exams are really built to leverage blockchain in that type of setting. What really sets us apart, like I mentioned, Oracle, Siemens, Luxoft, Purdue, there's a lot of companies that are continually going through our certification exams and making sure that they're relevant. Our exams are proctored at Pearson VUE, which helps provide relevancy. And we're training most of the large organizations in the world. We've trained Cisco, KPMG. We actually trained KPMG. We did another class with them yesterday. Price Waterhouse, Microsoft, Merck. We've trained Air France, USAA, the Union Bank of the Philippines. All of our instructors are booked all this week doing different engagements for customers. And what that does, it's not necessarily important that we're training these big companies. It's that as we're out there, we're understanding the use cases. Why are people looking at blockchain right now? What are they doing with it? Are they looking at it for Air France is a great example, and you can read up on this. Air France is using blockchain for loyalty points so that you can actually take those points and leverage them at different locations. So for our instructors to take all that feedback and what people are really doing and rolling it into our content, that's a huge benefit from anyone who's teaching our content, who's getting to learn from our content. They're really understanding why are people doing this and what are they doing with it. We also have multiple training modalities. So you can train students on demand. All of our trainings are recorded, or you can train them instructor led. And that just allows for a broader reach. There are people who need to train on demand because they can only train at night or on the weekends, or they just need more time. That gives that those two modalities really help reach everyone. And then lastly, our training's hands-on. We want people to be interactive with our training and actually get in there and build code. So that's really what sets us apart from the competition. We're the only people doing these things right now. There are companies that you'll see popping up with different certifications, but they're just web-based exams, which are really more like certs of completion than a certification. So that kind of is what sets us apart from the competition. And I think all of the stuff we've talked about, but really the key takeaways are just right now in the blockchain market, there's a huge shortage of talent. People are looking for people who understand blockchain. Even if a company is not ready to roll it out, they might be looking to explore. Is it something we should look at? Are we going to be impacted by this? If you're part of that supply chain of Walmart, you are. And they've got to make moves in order to continue working with Walmart. And really that our certification, it's globally recognized. It's through Pearson VUE. There's hundreds of corporations that are leveraging our certification right now to validate skill set. And our curriculum is it's in-depth curriculum. We have everything from the very basics of blockchain all the way through specialty courses that we covered. So there's a lot to do within our curriculum and within the training options that we have. And there really should be something for everyone that you work with. So I think that's it from my side. Does anyone have any questions or about blockchain, about our classes, about use cases?
Hi, Melissa. Thanks so much. We do have a few questions that have come in, so I'll read those to the team now. So what are the most popular classes?
The two most popular classes that we're seeing are the foundations, architecture. On the coding side, the most popular class that we're seeing right now is fabric.
Great. And then in general, how are universities and colleges putting these classes to work, any of the blockchain classes?
Well, there's many universities who are starting to kind of recognize that blockchain needs to be discussed within the curriculum. So as I mentioned, even if it's not necessarily a degree in blockchain, having classes that they integrate into their current curriculum that help people understand what blockchain is, that's an imperative thing to do for anyone who's rolling out of college and into the corporate world. Having an understanding of blockchain is going to be necessary.
Mm-hmm. Great. So just looking, I see a couple other questions. And as a reminder to everyone, please feel free to add your questions in the chat box on the right-hand side of your screen. So next question that came in, what companies are using blockchain today?
I think I went through a bunch of the companies that we're working with, but there's a lot of great use cases out there. Like I mentioned, Air France is using it for loyalty points. Walmart is, the cheerleader for blockchain right now. That's a huge use case. And so you see a lot of companies starting to integrate blockchain into their solution, but you also see a lot of really big companies like IBM, AWS, Oracle that are all using what they call blockchain as a service. So for people who don't necessarily want to build out their own blockchain, they can tie into Oracle's blockchain, or they can tie into Amazon's blockchain or IBM. So we're starting to see this whole other market of blockchain as a service, similar to how you could think of with the cloud. Nobody's really creating their own infrastructure in-house anymore. They're going to AWS and they're leveraging their cloud platform or another provider. So there's a huge second segment that's happening with blockchain as a service that all the big players are involved in right now. I mean, you can tie into these blockchains now. And then we're seeing companies that are looking to leverage it for all different use cases across the board. We did a really neat class out in Europe, and it was farmland and figuring out how to put the farmland onto the blockchain so that anything that was subsidized could be seen publicly. We just did a class at the United Kingdom Pensions Department where they're looking to move pensions onto a blockchain so that transparent and everyone can see them. And everyone knows exactly who got paid what when. So there's a lot of neat use cases that are happening that some are already rolled out, some are still in the process of being rolled out, but it's blockchain's really here. I mean, we're definitely at a point where a major Fortune 500 company is either already implemented blockchain or is on the path to implement blockchain as a part.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very interesting. So let's see, another couple questions have come in. This one is, what is the difference between Blockchain Training Alliance certification and other blockchain certifications? For example, certified blockchain expert.
So the only other certification that we really come across in the market is through a company called Blockchain Council. They're out of India. And that's the certified blockchain expert. And the blockchain expert is kind of a misleading title. It's really our foundational exam. So we say it's a business foundation and they say that you're an expert. So two very different sides of the coin there. The biggest difference is our exams are proctored at Pearson VUE. And as anyone knows who works with Pearson VUE, you have to show your ID. You have to book an appointment. It's a legitimate and valid exam. For Blockchain Council, theirs is when you complete the class, you do a quiz, and if you pass, you're certified. I've been in training a long time, over 20 years, and Microsoft, VMware, Oracle, that's just not a certification. It might be a cert of completion, but we don't view it as a certification. So I think that's the biggest difference. Another just kind of people who are really into blockchain like that our blockchain certs are placed onto a blockchain. That's kind of a unique thing that we do that people feel we're immersed in the technology with them. So those would be the biggest differences. But the blockchain expert is coming from Blockchain Council, and it's an online exam. So it just depends I guess if you wanted just a quick exam, that'd be the way to go. But if you want an exam that has validity in the market, ours is really the only one right now.
Yeah, and this is Jeff. If I can just add on to Melissa's comment, and one of the reasons why we elected to partner with the Blockchain Training Alliance was because of the validity of their certifications. As Melissa mentioned, there's other certifications that are available in the marketplace. Many of them are not proctored, so someone can sit with an open book and take those exams. And again, from a self-assessment, that they're fine tools to someone who wants to to determine whether they've learned something in a classroom or other self-paced learning experience. But as far as Melissa stated, as far as validity in both from an academic perspective, but also in the workplace, you're really Blockchain Training Alliance is the only certifications that we've seen globally that have gone through both the effort to work with leading experts to develop the exams, but also the validation and the structure and control and governance around how they're taken and scored.
Great. Thank you both for that information. Couple other questions here. The first one is, how do I identify people who have an interest in blockchain?
That's a great question. I think identifying people who have an interest in blockchain is really anyone who has an interest in technology as a whole. If you have someone that's in a computer science program or that's looking to move through any kind of degree in computer science, that's someone who's interested in blockchain. Of course, we have people who are just interested in it from kind of a executive level. They want to understand what it is, be able to talk about it. But moving out of a degree or any kind of program where blockchain isn't discussed, you're going to need to know at least what it is to move into a corporate setting. So the market and the net of who's interested is huge. In terms of, like I mentioned earlier, it might not be someone who's going to use blockchain job every single day, but they're going to need to understand what it is in any kind of career path in computer science.
Great. Thanks, Melissa. And we just got a follow-up question to the previous question talking about validation and the certification exam. And this question is, aside from validation, which is very important, is there any difference in terms of the content of the exam?
In terms of content, we've looked at the expert exam, if that's what you're referring to, and our foundation exam and their expert exam asked similar questions because there's just basics of blockchain. You know, what does blockchain provide? What are the different types of blockchain? There's foundational questions of blockchain. And again, we consider that a foundational level knowledge of blockchain and not an expert level. As far as other certifications that Blockchain Council or other companies offer, I'm not sure how the questions match up. I know ours are geared at making sure that whatever the question is, it's relevant in the market.
Mm-hmm. Very good. Thank you for that clarification. So it looks like we have a final question here, and it looks like it might be one for Jeff on the partner side. So what modalities are available for partners to sell to their students?
Great. Thank you, Vanessa. Yes, so we spoke earlier about the ability to offer a classroom experience and the materials that you can purchase, again, the print and digital or digital only offerings, along with the exam voucher and labs for those hands-on technical courses. So you can, with a certified instructor, and we can talk more about that process as we follow up. But with a certified instructor, you can deliver that, again, live, virtual, or brick and mortar. There's also two other options that are available through Logical Operations from the Blockchain Training Alliance. The first is an on-demand self-paced e-learning course. So there are courses available mapping again to the most popular courses and exams. So you have the ability to resell those, and so students can take those in a self-paced manner. Obviously, you can offer, additional mentoring services beyond that if you want to support a student in their self-paced journey. And then for those who are unsure yet of how whether it's a fit for your business or for your institution, or if you're not yet able to access an instructor, you also do have the ability to resell into the Blockchain Training Alliance their virtual classes. So they have a regular schedule of virtual classes that they offer, and you have the ability to resell in those as well. And again, we'll provide more information as we follow up from this webinar, but all three capabilities, whether delivering yourself, self-paced, or reselling into the Blockchain Training Alliance's virtual classes, are options available to you.
Very good. Thanks so much, Jeff. And it looks like that was the last question that came in. So I'd like to thank everyone for joining us today, and a special thank you to Melissa and Megan from Blockchain Training Alliance for the very informative presentation. As I mentioned earlier, we will be sharing a copy of the recording and slides within a few days. So thanks again to everyone.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.